So welcome back. Thanks for joining me, Anne Collins, for another episode of the Leaders Who Love What They Do podcast. For those who don't know me, I'm the founder of Blue Bottle Coaching, and I work with senior leaders across a range of countries and industries to accelerate their leadership career by helping them to search out and address their blind spots, to rethink and transform their leadership style to reach their biggest career goals. So today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Jahn all the way from Florida. So he is a technology executive who has led IT teams for Fortune 500 companies, and he is currently CIO and co-founder of MyBasePay. He studied at Harvard Business School, and as an entrepreneur he has built and sold several software companies. He continues to advise and invest in technology startups and is heavily involved in supporting the development of the technology industry. He's an official member of the Forbes Technology Council. On top of that, somehow he also finds time to host a fabulous podcast called Ivy Podcast, where he interviews Fortune 500 leaders about leadership. So if you'd like to find that link, it will be in the show notes, along of course with all the other information. So welcome, Jahn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Anne. Wow, what a...
Oh, there, I didn't hear you there. We did have a problem of connection. I'm just going to say that to the welcome again because it completely cut out. Welcome, Jahn. Welcome, Jahn. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks so much, Anne. I hope the connection is okay now. I guess that's us talking across the ocean.
That's it. That
I
little...
really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me. And isn't technology just amazing that we can talk? You in Florida, me in Belfort in France. I'm constantly still amazed and delighted by the fact that we can make these connections. So thank you so much. And I'm so looking forward to talking to you today. So, and talking about international relations, I understand that you speak Kazakh and Russian. And when we spoke before recording, you told me that you left Kazakhstan after 1991 and the collapse of Russian control there. And I'd love to hear more about your story. So what was your experience of moving across the world to the US?
Yeah, it was definitely a great experience. I left Kazakhstan when it was still Soviet Union, and a lot of great things. One of them is, perseverance and being creative with business. So that's one of the things that really I took away with me. And, it was an interesting experience coming from that environment into completely different. I came to US and I actually thought it would be, the big city, New York and all of that great stuff. But I actually moved to Montana out of all states. So Montana is very, rural state, and, not a lot of big cities. Everyone pretty much knows each other. Everyone is super friendly. So it was like taking kind of the jungle boy, so to say, and get domesticated almost. So yeah, it was a great experience. And so, from a perspective of, multiple languages, that's how we grew up, mainly because being in Soviet Union, everyone spoke multiple languages. It's part of your republic, or whether, you had to learn, speak Russian as well. So that was great. That really helped kind of that shape that global perspective from that standpoint, really from early on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so what other advantages? I mean, obviously having the language must be just amazing anyway, because obviously having the capacity to be bilingual in Kazakh and then Russian and then English, I'm sure picking up other languages is not a problem for you now. But are there other advantages and maybe challenges also with that big move at that time before the internet, when we didn't know what was maybe on the other side of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just in general, coming from the environment of Soviet Union, obviously everything was limited, resources and capacity and whatever the case may be. So just growing up in general, I had to be very creative with everything that we've had. And moving to the United States, the land of opportunity, it's a completely different world. And I think it was just, very humbling experience at the same time. To have so much opportunity presented to you and really be able to, to really appreciate everything that this country had to offer, and from a standpoint really focusing on something that really, can make an impact and try to grow it from that standpoint. That really resonated from, as I was growing up, and still kind of how I operate through the companies that I run or the people that I work with. I think that was kind of one of the challenges that really was almost a blessing in disguise.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. And so having this outlook of appreciating what you had and those opportunities, do you think that changed your mindset as well? That you really were striving maybe for things.
Right, absolutely. And I think that was also one of the main reasons for moving over here. Really that continuous need and continuous urge to become better, to be better, to continuously innovate, to continuously, do something, some things differently. That was also one of the reasons for that, that relocation. And that was, I still have a lot of family back home, and I used to have actually a company, multiple companies that tied back to my homeland. So there was a lot of still great relationship put back and forth, and I had to travel a lot. So that was definitely kind of my way of paying back, so to say.
Yeah, oh, that's a lovely story, and I'm sure having one foot in both worlds, that must also bring advantages.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also, I tried to, like with my kids, I have small children, kind of getting them exposed to that as well, to experience that culture where I grew up, and my wife did as well. And shaping that in general, that global outlook, I think that's, it's imperative for anyone, not just in business, not just in leadership, but just in general as a person, as a citizen of this world. I think that's super important.
And why is that? Can you tell us a little bit more about what that brings for you, having that global outlook?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, in the sense that, especially now, with pandemic, that really highlighted that need for, just being that global citizen, so to say, where at the end of the day, if we put it in a business context, we interact with people with all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of cultural upbringings, from diverse, backgrounds just in general. And to be able to, at the end of the day, to have that very strong, emotional intelligence IQ, so to say, where you're able to emphasize with the folks of different backgrounds and put yourself in their shoes to see where they're coming from. I think it's one of the main recipes for success, to be able to collaborate successfully with folks of different backgrounds. I'm pretty sure, everyone, whether in business context or personal, you deal with people from all over the world. And right now, these days, with everything being virtual, that elevated that particular need to the completely, new stratosphere. Like look at us, like you and I, just, completely talking on completely two different continents. And that's what I love about this. And I think just kind of from that global perspective, I see the huge importance there, and, just being able to collaborate successfully and help each other from that standpoint. I think it's, super important.
Yes, yeah, no, that's, and and I think this whole idea, as you say, of being a global citizen, but also bringing those benefits in to global leadership as well. And I was just wondering, for you, what does global leadership actually look like in practice? So you've talked about this idea of connecting across, literally across continents, and having that empathy for each other. Does it have other aspects to it as well in the world of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with technology we have in place, we're very lucky and very fortunate to be able to collaborate with whether your clients, your partners, or even your employees, coworkers, on a global scale. For us, we have, software development teams all over the world. We have, it's literally all over the world. And for us to be able to come together in a meeting like this in a virtual setting, and collaborate together, I think, just having that global mindset, I think it also really helps lead those teams virtually, because you don't get this opportunity to interact in person, which completely, removes a very important dynamic to be able to to feel the energy, so to say, of that other person sitting next to you. But at the same time, having that global leadership perspective is to be able to pick up any nonverbal cues, pick on any communication patterns when you deal with, with your, or with whoever you're interacting with, whether on a Zoom or just a phone call. For me, that, I put a lot of emphasis to that, to really continuously improve on my soft skills, to be able to not only communicate clearly from my perspective, but also to make sure that, I am listening, that I'm really paying attention to what others are saying, and to help each other out from that standpoint. I think for me, that's kind of my perspective into that global leadership perspective.
Oh, yeah, that's very interesting, because I think what you say is so true about that need for, well, even more effort when it comes to communication. There's that an extra layer of effort that's required. But the payoff for that is this wonderful diversity and richness and experience, and being able to work across cultural and country boundaries, which is amazing. Yes, so you've worked in technology for many years, and in my work as a leadership coach, I come across clients working in technical areas like IT or engineering, for example, and they often struggle to make that transition from doer or expert to leader. And I just wondered, did you have any challenges around that? And if you did, or if you support other people who do, how do you navigate that, and how do you help others to navigate that?
Well, that's a great question. I love that topic, and I talk about that a lot with with my peers and with friends of mine and other folks that are running different size organizations. And it's definitely, especially coming from the technology background and more into leadership, it's number one is the choice that you make, but also a lot of times it kind of falls on your lap, where you are excelling as an individual contributor. And that's exactly what happened in my case. But I also had some really great leaders coming up through my career, and I always kind of it was very inspiring for me how they led the teams. And also it's something that I always wanted to pay forward and kind of build the next generation of leaders, so to say. And my biggest takeaway from being an individual contributor, which I still struggle with on a daily basis, where that urge to just just say, I'm just gonna do it. I think it's very important to hold yourself back from that standpoint, because at the end of the day, when you make that transition from technology more to like the business leadership perspective, it becomes not so much about you anymore. It's all about the people that you lead. It's about others, and to have that outlook, that really helps me from that standpoint. Because at the end of the day, yes, I could roll up my sleeves and do that myself, but it's not going to help anybody who is working with me or for me on any of my teams. And it's better to let them actually fail, to let them actually learn from that experience, and kind of actually hold some type of a retrospective to understand, why do you think that happened, and how do we make sure that those things don't happen again and prevent it in the future. I think to me that's a great leadership. And also that transition from technology to more of a business, and kind of the kind of moving up a little bit in that corporate ladder, so to say. The other component is just to be able to understand how important it is for me as a leader to focus on the strategy versus on some of the lower level tasks, so to say. Because if I am rolling up my sleeves and doing the things that are day to day, who is leading the organization? Who is leading the team? Who is leading that, the overall, what's the vision? I think a lot of executives forget about that, and they kind of wanted to go back and really, start executing. And because a lot of times when I was not in a leadership position, I always admired how great leaders that I was operating under, they were able to set that very clear vision, the strategy, and then enable the teams to deliver towards that particular goal. So that for me, kind of that summarizes in a sense that particular transition, which is an ongoing process. It's, it's a continuous learning experience, and, I love it.
And I love what you say about how it's even better to allow people to fail. But in fact, it seems to me that your vision of failure is actually, it's a learning opportunity. So you're learning from that. So you're empowering your team in that sense. You're allowing them to have problems and to learn from those.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to add is, one of my, the people that I look up to is, a gentleman named Naval Ravikant. And he is one of the most successful, venture capitalists and investors, in technology world. And one thing he says, which really resonated with me as I was transitioning into that leadership role, is working, as kind of the concept of working as a lion versus as a cow. And doesn't mean anything in a negative context, but more in a sense, majority of people work, as cows. They, you chew the no nutrient grass on day to day, 9 to 5, kind of performing whatever the responsibilities I assigned to you on day to day. But the way lions operate is lion sits and observes. Lion, waits for the perfect opportunity. And when he sees that great opportunity, the lion sprints. And, he puts his entire 110% effort into that, accomplishing that, achieving that or capitalizing on that opportunity. And then they reap the rewards of that. So that also, to me, I put that in the context of, the great leadership as well. To be able to observe, to be able to put others in a position to actually succeed. And when you see the opportunity to improve, you kind of sprint towards that. So they just wanted to throw that one example into that.
It's a wonderful metaphor, that. And of course, the lion then sends the lioness to do the chasing.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Lions don't actually do anything.
They don't do a lot, do they? But
I love that. That's a great context to that.
So just moving on and in the same direction with your IT work, and a lot of your work is about innovation. And what I've been so impressed, it's been such a privilege to have this conversation with you and our previous meeting as well. I've so enjoyed it because it's been so interesting to hear about how you promote innovation and how you help others to be creative and innovate. And one of your current projects, if I've understood correctly, is around building a technical platform for HR departments. That's just one example. So many leaders, no matter what their industry, want to foster a culture of innovation and creativity. And in the technology world, of course, you do it brilliantly. And how do you do that? What's the secret?
Oh, I love that topic. Innovation, we can probably talk about, the entire podcast episode about this. So for me, at the end of the day, innovation is really going back to the basics and trying to come together as a group and understand what real problem are we trying to solve? What value is it, in it for our users or whoever we're trying to, to cater to. And another great metaphor that I like to use is kind of the Super Mario concept. We all know the video game, and the concept goes basically that everyone, for example, your customers, they start out as the regular little Mario that runs around, collects whatever the coins and whatever the case may be. And for us, when we talk about innovation, is really focusing on being that flower. So when little Mario encounters that little flower, he immediately grows up and he starts shooting things, and destroying things just becomes this like unstoppable force, so to say. So that's the metaphor that I use, in a sense that let's be that little flower that's going to empower our customers. And in a sense, to become that flower, you really have to foster that culture where everyone feels empowered to experiment. Experimentation for me is a huge part of innovation, because at the end of the day, if you don't experiment, if you don't try things, you're never going to be able to understand the true impact of that. And also from a standpoint, kind of flipping the org chart upside down and saying, hey, I'm actually at the very bottom and I'm going to walk the walk, in a sense that I will try things and I'm not going to be afraid to fail. Of course, I'm going to make calculated risks, but at the same time, failure is not really a failure. It's more of an opportunity to learn. And as long as, I'm operating from that perspective and everyone around me sees that, I think that resonates very well with the organization, with the culture that we're trying to build. And that then really passes on to how our employees and everyone treats our customers as well. And that's, I think, for me, kind of just summarizing, flipping the org chart, walking the walk, in a sense, experimenting and not being afraid to fail. Those are some of the key ingredients of really building and continuously fostering that culture of innovation, which, I'm super passionate about. And we talk about that on a daily basis with my team, with my partners and my customers.
I love the fact that you talk about it with your customers as well. So you're really allowing them to be creative as well, if I've understood correctly.
Absolutely, and I think it's a concept that often goes overlooked, because a lot of us tend to think that I'm going to build this killer product that my customer is going to love. Most likely they won't, because at the end of the day, probably, even your mom doesn't care about the product that you build. But in a sense, looking at it, what is the true problem that my customers are facing? And if I can solve that or help them become better, and also soliciting that feedback, you'd be amazed how open some of the customers would be to share their experience, to share their thoughts on how to make things better. So to us and to me and to the team that I'm part of, that's been a great source of kind of inspiration for the next level of innovation.
That's amazing. So you can, you really, the customer is part of the journey, a part of the creative journey with you. And so you're learning from them. They're obviously learning a lot from you. And it's a great synergy, it sounds.
Right, absolutely. No, that's exactly that. And to say, I encourage all of my peers and my entire, the team that we have, is to continuously, use that as an opportunity to have the feedback of our customers, because those are the biggest advocates. And, how you narrow it down to your greatest supporters is, you ask a question in the sense, if we were to remove our product today, who would be the most upset? And those that are the most upset, you really focus on that segment first. So that's how we view things in terms of really finding that really perfect product market fit, so to say.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so with your technology or your technical platform for HR departments, is that how you've developed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the platform that we've been building, kind of this back office technology to enable the staffing and the talent acquisition departments of organizations of various size to really streamline their operations, to really, almost let our technology handle the day-to-day, the administrative tasks of the payroll administration of, the benefits processing, all of that. And, you should be focused on what's important. And for you, what's important is to, make sure that the employees that you hire are, very happy, that they really experience that onboarding journey. And also really focusing on kind of the aspects of the business growth, or whether you're taking your organization to the next level. I think it's more important to do it from that standpoint. That's really how we view the technology that we've built that will enable the organizations to focus on something that really will help them grow.
Yeah, so it's interesting sort of how you're in that sense, how you're positioning technology maybe for the future as well. How would you say that technology can help us for the future in terms of leadership more generally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at the end of the day, technology is everywhere. Technology is here to stay, and it's an enabler. It's an enabler to make things easier, to make things better, to make things faster, whether that's decision making, whether that's you serving your customers, and really embracing that aspect, because at the end of the day, the companies that will succeed in the next period are those that really view themselves as technology organizations. I love talking to leaders who really, for example, I was talking to a president of a very, with the furniture organization that has been here for decades, and really them transforming themselves and looking at themselves now as technology company that sells furniture. I think to me, that's, just that outlook alone, it's a great recipe for success. And that's kind of one of the tips and one of the kind of the strategies that I always talk with a lot of my peers or the customers is, hey, it's with a global outlook and everything shifting to virtual, are you looking at yourself as a technology organization? And if not, what are the different ways that you're going to succeed in this market? So that's just kind of my 2 cents into that.
Yeah, interesting. So in a sense, this idea of reframing our identity. So whatever business we're in, we need to incorporate technology not just as a tool, but really as an integral part of our businesses.
Right, absolutely. I think it's, even I still struggle with that concept to fully embrace that, on a day to day, because you think about, what is the core structure of our business, whether that's talent acquisition, staffing, or HR. But at the end of the day, we are a technology company that enables that industry, or enables that particular segment of our customers. And it's an ongoing task for us to really embrace that. I talk about that on every staff meeting that we have on a weekly basis, that we are that technology company that enables our customers.
So what are the challenges then?
Challenges from a standpoint of really
embracing
shaping
technology. Yes.
Yeah, it's especially if you're not necessarily a true technology company, maybe even before the pandemic, where you were serving customers in, the brick and mortar store or whatever not the case may be. I think this pandemic really kind of, really put a lot of highlights from perspective of really embracing technology as at the core of your organization. Because if you don't, different shifts and trends, such as, the COVID or whatever the case may be is next, if you're not able to adapt, if you're not able to serve your customers or whatever the case is on a global scale virtually, I think you're just limiting yourself from that standpoint. So those are some of the biggest challenges, but it's a continuous iteration and really making sure that not only we internally view ourselves as a technology company, but also our customers and our partners, our vendors, everyone sees it that way. I think it just makes things a little bit more easier in the sense that that's how we operate.
Yes. It's lots to think about there for us. Yeah, great. So finally, we're on to our last question already. It's come around very quickly. And I just ask you the big question that I ask to everybody. And what is your top tip, Jahn, for other leaders?
And that's a great question. And I have, a lot of tips for other leaders, but in a sense, it really boils down to kind of what I was just talking about. And I spent, just yesterday, I was talking to a founder of is a fitness equipment for women. It's at the end of the day, it's a stripper pole that it's installed at your house. And her and I were talking, she's seen tremendous growth in her business, especially through pandemic with everyone trying to work out at home and all of that. And her and I were talking about this, and I said, how are you viewing yourself, your organization? Because I advise on the board of that. And really for us to have that conversation, to view herself as a technology organization, to be able to succeed in that sense, that at the end of the day, your equipment is just one thing, but the core of that is her providing access to the mobile application that she has and getting access to all of the training courses that she puts out on a daily basis. That really shifted her mindset in the sense, I got to invest more into technology that really enables my customers versus focusing on the equipment per se. I think that's just one of the, oftentimes overlooked concepts. And that's, not really a tip, so to say, for leadership, but it's something that I continuously, have these conversations with a lot of my friends, a lot of the, the folks that are coming up in the career ladder, or also somebody who is above me. Just having that conversation, having that outlook into things, I think that's really going to help organizations put themselves ahead of the curve as they compete in this, very highly competitive market.
Great, thank you. So we've come to the end there, and I know that there will be people who desperately want to contact you, Jahn. So if listeners do wish to contact you, what's the best way? Is LinkedIn the best way to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You can just look up by my name, or just go to mybasepay.com, and you guys will be able to find my contact information there. So yeah, absolutely, LinkedIn is would be a great opportunity for us to connect.
Okay, great. Well, I will put all of those details in the show notes, obviously. So anyone who's listening, do go to the show notes and find the link there for Jahn. Well, thank you so much, Jahn, for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure and fascinating to hear about your approach to leadership, particularly your global outlook, and also the integration of technology into your approach to leadership and how important that is. And I think you've given us lots lots to think about during this podcast episode. So thank you very, very much. Thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to help us grow the podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, subscribe and share. If you're an executive or a senior leader looking to progress in your career and transform what you do, do join the Love to Lead community, where you can find information about our programs, events and resources. For more details, go to today's show notes. So this is Anne Collins. Thanks so much for joining us and for listening, and do join me again soon to meet another inspiring leader who loves what they do. Goodbye.